This group is made up of travel companies in the UK who have B Corp certification. They include Flugelbinder, Intrepid Travel, Joro Experiences, Pura Aventura, and Saw Days. And they have joined forces to help advocate for systemic change in the travel industry. And as travel begins to open up this summer to help people make sustainable travel choices. So today I'm really pleased to introduce two people from this group on our panel. We have Zina Ben-Sheikh, the MD of Intrepid Travel. Intrepid is the global leader in sustainable experience-rich travel, operating trips in 130 countries and 7 continents. We have Tom Power, founder and CEO of Pura Aventura, which has been inspiring active tailor-made trips to Spain, Portugal, and Latin America since 1999. And joining Zina and Tom to help discuss ways in which we can all shape travel as a positive force, we have Rory Boland, the travel editor for UK Consumer Association Which, and Juliet Kinsman, sustainability editor of Condé Nast, author, broadcaster, and founder of sustainability consultancy Buteco. My name is Rochelle Turner. I look after strategic insights and consumer research at Masher, and I'm a trustee of the Travel Foundation. We have opportunity for lots of Q&A, we hope today. There's a Q&A box down below at the bottom of your screen, and if you do have any questions, please type them in there and we will do our best to get them answered as we go on. What I'd like to do first of all, though, is start with a question. So we've got a poll question for you that should be coming up on your screen right away. And the question today is, if we can get it, there we go. To what extent do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Compared to my attitude to buying travel and taking trips prior to COVID, sustainability has now become a greater part of my purchase consideration. So compared to my attitude to buying trips and taking travel before COVID, sustainability has now become a greater part of my purchase consideration. So I'll just give you a few more seconds to respond to that. I'll do the countdown music. And 3, 2, 1. Let's see what we can get in terms of the results from that. Interesting. So we've got about 80% of people saying that they agree with that. 13% neither agree or disagree, and 4% tend to disagree, and 1% strongly disagree. Interesting. Okay. So it's taken a long time, but certainly in my opinion, over the last few months, we've been hearing a lot about building back better as it relates to the travel industry. And indeed, the theme of this year's Earth Day, which is today, is restoring our planet. So I just want one sentence from all of our panelists today on what does better travel mean to you? So let's go in alphabetical order for the sake of it today. So Juliet, what does better travel mean to you?
Thanks so much. Gosh, that's so interesting. Great question. Better for me, it means quality. And for me, quality means when you think about, actually, it's thrown me. It's such a powerful question, actually. For me, it means positive impact. Of course it does. It means things doing better so that you leave less in your wake and then that's bad, and leave more in your wake that's good. There are so many platitudes, building back better, strong, all of these. I just want people to actually mean what they're thinking and saying.
Great. Okay. Positive impact. Rory.
Try and be concise as I can. I think taking more care over our choices about where we go and how we get there would be the two most important things for me.
Okay. Tom?
I've been thinking about this one, and it seems to me that the issue we have with travel is that we've treated it as a commodity. That seems to me something that causes the problem. So actually, if we stop treating travel as a commodity, but instead treat it as an exchange, something to be valued. So, ultimately, sort of considered travelers make for better travel.
Great, thanks. And Zina?
I guess to me, better travel means a form of travel that doesn't benefit just myself and the individuals, but that benefits also the destinations, the people, and the planet. which is interestingly very close to what B Corp stands for, but I really think it's true. I'm coming from Morocco. I've seen firsthand what a good form of travel can do in destinations when it's done well, as well as when it's not done so well. So it's really a form of travel that benefits both sides, not just the customers.
Great, thanks. So for more than a year, we have we've had to halt. We've protected each other from the pandemic, which has meant that we've had to stop doing many of the things that we loved to do before this pandemic hit us. And in this pause, some of us have found opportunity to reflect on the things that we really value. So we value nature, and we value, some of us less so, the time spent with family and friends, and travel as well. So in the beginning there, we just saw a poll which said that about 80% of people said that they are now perhaps thinking more about sustainability than they did before the pandemic. But Rory, you work for the Consumers Association, and what I really want to know is where is consumer thinking around sustainability in travel at the moment? Now that we've been locked down so long, does anyone care at the moment?
I think people definitely care, or we wouldn't all be here together today. My daughter next door has finally woken up, so I can remove these headphones, hear you all a bit more clearly. I think sustainability, while it is important to people, it does, if we're being brutally honest, tend to fall down the list slightly. People care about price and destination first, because those things are personal to them. The price you pay is personal. The destination you're going to is obviously personal. I suppose we hear a lot about flexible booking policies at the moment as well. I think when you poll people about do they care about sustainability, the numbers can be very high, but when it comes to the action point, the actual booking, it often doesn't translate. And I think the reason behind that is that sustainability can feel big. It's a big idea. It's hard to know how you in your individual holiday decisions can influence that. And I think, there are two ways to make those decisions personal. You can talk to people and tell people about how if you choose this destination over this destination, there won't be all those queues. You won't face, masses of people in the square. You'll be able to go into nice cafes and talk to people and generally just have a better holiday. And that's what people want to hear. They want to hear about having a better holiday. And I think on top of that, I think there's been some really good progress with those providers, holiday companies, comparison sites, some airlines, although less so, who are being more upfront about carbon emissions in particular, although there are, of course, other elements to sustainability. Because if you, at the point of booking, are presented with, well, if you choose this holiday over this holiday, it will be better for the environment. If you choose this flight over this flight, it will be better for the environment. That is likely to lead to better decisions, because then it feels personal to you. Then it's a decision you can control, you can change, and people do want to do that. And I think one of the best investigations that Which has done on this in recent years was about airlines and carbon emissions, where we showed if you were flying to New York, to Singapore, some Spanish destinations as well, we did a comparison of airlines and a comparison of plane types that they flew as well, and essentially said that, your choice of plane, your choice of carrier, that can halve your carbon footprint. And that then makes it really meaningful to people. It feels like something they can control and something they can do. So I think about people caring about the sustainability, they care. It's about giving them more control, about giving them more information about how it's personal to them and the actions that they can take.
Great, thanks. We're going to go into the issue of carbon in a minute, but so just on that, sort of giving people more control and helping them choose. So Zina, as a B Corp, we all often hear, as Rory's just said, that businesses respond to customer demand. So do you find more customers are coming to Intrepid because you are a B Corp, or because you have very clearly stated your standards on sustainability?
Definitely, since we've become a B Corp, we have been growing faster, attracting better talents, increased our brand awareness, attracting better partners. So we've become a better business. The more we've been investing in purpose, the better we've been growing. But the true reality, referring back to what Rory was saying, is that a first, Intrepid customer, when someone buys an Intrepid trip for the first time, they often do it because of the fact that it's a good value for money, that it's a great experience, that it's a great product. And often there is an educational piece that happens during the trip. Once they get to talk to their, sorry for the background noise, with their tour leaders and learn about the communities, learn about what the business does in those communities, and how the way of travel has actually has a positive impact. And this is how then we generate more customers coming to us. But referring back to Rory, the first purchase often is not driven by the fact that we're necessarily a B Corp, although the B Corp certification has definitely helped us as a business to grow and increase our awareness and have better people working for us.
Tom, how about you? I mean, do you have your customers coming because of your position on sustainability issues?
No. I mean, it's starting to happen. You're starting to get people sort of mention it. We're starting to push longer trips. So there's a sort of a latent interest. Our customers are probably slightly different to Zena's core customers, slightly older, less price sensitive, shall we say. So we have that luxury. But equally, I'd say that that's not why we do what we do. We've chosen to go down this path because, you know, when I set Pura Aventura up, it was because, you know, I'd been to Patagonia and absolutely loved it, and I wanted to share something beautiful. I didn't want to get into an extractive industry. So it's just the kind of, I want to get up in the morning and look in the mirror, and for the team to look in the mirror and not feel like, you know, we may as well be mining coal. We want to feel good about ourselves. So there's that. And also I think customers, to be fair to consumers, there is so much noise out there. I do think they care, but I think there is an extraordinary amount of noise and confusion about, well, what should I be looking for? What should I be asking?
Juliette, you've made a really big call this year to say you're really gonna call out greenwashing. So how rampant is it, do you find?
Oh, is that how I come across? I mean, I've always been someone, I like to think I navigate people away from greenwashing. I think I believe that there's going to be an emphasis that in the same way, I think it'll become illegal to make, you know, greenwashing claims. So in the same way that the food industry might have called something pure or natural meaningless words, I think that people will have to qualify those claims. I think that the consumers will certainly demand that. In terms of greenwashing, I mean, we've all had this wonderful year of reflection, and a lot more people have joined the sustainability conversation. And I am hearing from a lot of people that are observing a lot of the words I use in articles or that I speak are finding their way into the narrative of travel brands. So they're changing their narrative, but behind the scenes, it's business as usual. So I think that's sort of what I'm talking about. Anyone can say I'm eco-friendly and I care. If you Google eco-friendly aviation or eco-friendly flights, you'll get lots of blog posts. I mean, no flight is eco-friendly. I think that, you know, language-wise, people will hold it to account. I think it will, you know, you just won't be able to make these grand green claims.
So I keep seeing lots of comments in the chat, and that's absolutely wonderful. And there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. So if you did have questions, please do send them through, and we will get to answering them as we go on. So, I mean, I guess let's just move. I mean, it wouldn't be right to have a conversation about how to travel better on Earth Day without talking about, well, let's say that the blue whale. I think we've all watched Seaspiracy recently. So the blue whale in our room, or the elephant, carbon. So we had a question that came in actually a couple of days ago from someone who I hope is watching today, Alison Burr. So thank you for your question. And she asks, how, as sustainable, responsible companies, do you justify using and selling air travel? Who wants to take that on? I mean, Zena or Tom, how do you justify that?
I'm happy to go first. Maybe just sharing an example of what we've been through since 32 years as business committing to be sustainable. In 2010, Intrepid became carbon neutral, and that was a big milestone for us back at the time. It actually involved understanding our impacts, and it's something that we haven't done before we entered that, you know, carbon review, and understanding by measuring our impact and then reviewing how we can avoid, reduce, then offset what's left. So for the ones who don't like or don't believe in carbon offsetting, I want to say it's actually an amazing exercise for business to start with, but it's no longer enough. I think science has proven it. And this is why we've taken that second milestone for us later in 2020, when we have received verified science-based target and committed to reduce and decarbonize our business, so our offices, but also our tours, to be in line with the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement and not above. And that involves a lot of work, reviews of how we operate trips, replace transportation, flights by lower carbon transportation, involve promoting more closer to home options, more walking, cycling type of holidays, as well as reviewing the whole of our offices around the world. We have offices in 30 locations and move them into renewable energy. So yes, that elephant in the room needs to be addressed. Carbon is not something we can avoid. I want to say that we started quite early, but we started small and we've learned throughout the way we've been through. And I think I want to say to the industry or businesses maybe who don't know enough, or, you know, it's kind of a mystical topic and it's kind of difficult to address. It needs to start somewhere, because we won't have another option. There won't be a planet for us to send travelers to. And so as an industry, we really have to take action together and make the right calls, which is what we're doing really as a business.
Is there anyone else that wants to pick up on that one?
Well, I often witter on about this, but I suppose it's the kind of, you know, it always comes back to the should we travel question. And it just, this has always stuck with me that in 1905, the California Academy of Sciences sent a ship down to the Galapagos because they thought, well, these animals aren't going to survive. Came back a year later with 70,000 samples. Today, about something like 98% of the species that they preserved are still there in the Galapagos. So this kind of catastrophe that they were foreseeing back in 1905, 1906 hasn't come to pass. And the stewardship of the Galapagos has in many ways been contingent upon tourism. There are examples across the world. Costa Rica in the 1970s was the most rapidly deforesting country on the planet. It is not anymore. It is reforested spectacularly. Antarctica, almost the entirety of Patagonia is now protected under the phenomenal kind of work of the Tompkins Conservation Foundation. So, you know, that's my specialism, is that side of the world, by the way. So I'm leaving Africa and Asia and things out of it, not because they're not doing amazing things there. But tourism has the power, done right, done thoughtfully, done well, is absolutely fundamentally important. It is the greatest transfer of wealth from the rich to the poor that has ever happened. Moderated, done thoughtfully, it absolutely should happen, as long as now we take responsibility and we measure, as Zena says, we measure and we take responsibility for the negative, for the planetary fly tipping that happens, then yeah, the net is absolutely positive.
Julia, a lot of the companies, and I think you've just got a new rating out or a listing out of hotels and resorts that are actually sort of giving back and are creating regenerative practices in their operations. I mean, you must have a view then, you know, given as you also look at the very luxury market, you know, this justification and difference between, you know, exploiting and causing damage on one side, but then also doing immense good, like some of the examples Tom gave on the other.
Yes, thank you. You know, you gave me the honor of answering the very first question, and I had a moment of stage fright almost, because it's such a massive question. And I've been sitting listening to what is being spoken about, and I'm savoring every word, because these are original, helpful thoughts. And I think that's the distinction, by the way, is we're having a real conversation where so many people are reading from scripts. And I just want to go back to, you know, that idea of better and how do we travel better and better travel all these things. What's better? What is better? Better for whom? And so I'm really thinking, I think the origin, I'm racking my mind, but I think the origin in Latin is better quality, is what I was going to say. So what I've done, I mean, look, there's 800 certifications out there. And I personally, there are certain ones I rated before B Corp Travel, were EarthCheck, you know, very rigorous assessments. I'm really thrilled that, you know, people are waking up to what B Corp represents. Me personally, well, my background for 20 years is navigating people to the most beautiful, sexiest hotels. I go to a website, I look at the bedrooms, I look at the linens. This is not sustainability. But about 5 years ago, I realized that no one was spotlighting the hotels that are sexy and look great and are also doing good. But I'm not a scientist, and I'm not someone who uses a rigorous science-based assessment. But I do have a very keen sense of taste and a very keen sense of, is there something about that business that is doing good? And it's so complex and nuanced. And I'm just saying, these are the hotels I love for their look and feel. And by the way, each one is doing something special, whether it's employing, whether it's funding, you know, young girls in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco to get an education. You look at Casbah de Toubkal, the lodge, and Zena will know this hotel very well. They have plastic bottles there. So your typical person will go, oh, not eco, you know. But I know that the positive impact in what they're doing in terms of helping those girls is far reaching. And I could go on for days about why educating young girls actually is directly linked to climate change, but I won't go on now. So it's interesting. So all of this is fascinating. And it was so interesting what Tom said, you know, about this. They're different regions, different contexts. But what I really try and do is, let's say, look, if you want a beautiful, nice hotel, here are some of my favorites that I've either visited and I believe they do something good, and they have a legacy that is positive, or they educate you about something. But they might not tick all the boxes, but it's something, you know.
So I want to move into a discussion about B Corps. I mean, I know that it's not a certification that is that well known in the UK. And I want to also look at better business generally. So Rory, again, just sort of looking at Which, and I know that, I mean, I used to work at Which, so I know very well that it's known for its ratings and best buys. And I guess, is there a sense that there is some sort of correlation almost between the companies in your travel lists, the hotels or tour operator lists that come top? Are they, or do they tend to be those that are also doing more on sustainability? Or again, is there as yet less of a correlation between what consumers are wanting from a sustainability perspective and those that are perhaps providing the best value, which is one of the things that you're looking at?
There's definitely a correlation. It's not definitive. And we don't I should perhaps explain briefly for the people who don't work at Which and haven't worked at Which how it works. So we survey customers of tour companies, of airlines, people who stayed at hotels, and they then rate those companies on any number of ratings and give an overall score based on whether they would recommend the company, recommend the airline, so forth and so on. So it's based on thousands of experiences of being on holiday or taking a flight, staying at a hotel. I think there is a definitive correlation between the companies that we recommend and good companies. And I think good is the word, because while our, I suppose, stress is on the customer experience, so lots of the ratings will be, if you're on a plane, what was the comfort like? If you are using a tour company, was the holiday as described when you took it? Was it value for money, and so forth and so on? So it tends to lean towards customer experience. But when I look at the companies that come top, particularly in tour providers and holiday companies, they tend to be generally, not all of them, but generally good companies. And that's about sustainability. It's also about how they treat their staff. You know, it touches on many, many things. And when you then interrogate that, you find many of these things are related. The reason a certain airline, people have a better experience with it, is because the staff are quite happy, because the staff are treated quite well. So, you know, very few of these things are standalone. And I think we do increasingly see, so people kind of rate on a scale across all of these different things that we measure, but they also write in comments about companies, and we do increasingly see people writing in about sustainability. Equally, we increasingly see people challenging us if we recommend a company that is doing something poorly around sustainability. And you know, as all of us here will know, sustainability is such a huge word. It can touch on so many things. You know, I talked about some of the work we've done on carbon with airlines. So we've previously interrogated the carbon offsetting claims of UK airlines and found some of them were in fact not offsetting any carbon, despite claiming to do so. We've done the same with animal welfare. So we've looked into some of the largest UK companies, holiday companies, breaking their own charters on animal welfare and kind of got them to fix that. But I suppose the frustrating thing is that there's only so much we can interrogate. You know, it is our bread and butter to challenge companies over claims, but there's a limited amount we can do. And I think where you end up with that is it's on the consumer then to interrogate it. Well, if it's hard for Which to interrogate it, if it takes 3 trained investigators several months to interrogate it, how on earth can an individual consumer looking on a website do so? So yes, to bring it back to your original question, there definitely is a correlation between good sustainable companies and those that we recommend, but it's something we would hope to interrogate more on our side, and a trend we would expect to grow as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's look into some of that and unpick that a little bit. So we're launching today, as well as this great conversation about how to travel better, the Travel by B Corp website. So Tom, can you just explain a little bit about what B Corp companies do that is perhaps different to some other companies?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, there's what, 4,000 globally, 500 in the UK now, and I think the UK is the biggest community, fastest growing community, sorry. So there's a lot of diversity. It's everything from yogurt to holidays. What's different about B Corps is, I mean, B Corp, for those of you who don't know, it stands for Benefit Corporation, which is a legally distinctive form of operation. Your articles of association change so that you no longer are bound to take into account only the interests of shareholders. You are legally bound to take into account all stakeholders. So that means shareholders, the community, planet. Commonly put as its triple bottom line: people, profit, planet, or people, planet, profit more usually. So it is legally distinctive. But I think more than that, what you do when you certify is that you open yourself up to a degree of transparency, which I think speaks back to what Rory was talking about. You know, you sort of pull up the bonnet and look into the engine compartment, and you actually see, you basically have to accept that you're letting somebody else in to come in and audit your company on 5 different bases. So that's community, customers, governance, workers, and environment, and you're scored on all of those metrics. So it's a hell of an undertaking. It's a sort of cultural shift within the organization that you're saying, okay, look, we're not perfect, because we're not, but we're doing something here, we're trying. And it's rigorous. There is a reason, it struck me, there's a reason that B Corps trust fellow B Corps, because we know what we've been through.
Zina, I mean, your company is, and I'm going to get this wrong, but you're a B Corp, but you're also a B Corp in 26 other countries. Can you tell us a bit about the process for a company of your size becoming a B Corp?
Yeah, it's not exactly true. So I'll explain how we've been into the process of the Intrepid Group becoming B Corp. The first thing is, for the ones who know Intrepid, we've been operating trips for 32 years with sustainability as being the DNA. And in 2014, when we entered the B Corp certification, we thought that would be a very easy thing to do because we were perfect and we were doing it forever. So we really thought that would be absolutely no problem. It would take 6 months. In fact, it took us 3 years, And it took us to change a lot of things internally within our business. Tom mentioned commit to transparent reporting, and we've just launched our 2020 integrated report, which is a very difficult one to share because it shows transparently that we've been through a very difficult year. We had to reduce our workforce. We had to, we made, a lot of difficult decisions, but that's a commitment of being a B Corp, and that's something we had to do. Other things we've been doing is implementing new policies, improving our maternity policies, implementing a new voluntary policy, improve our gender balance, whether it's within our board, in our group leadership team where we've achieved 50-50, in our two leader teams where we had probably, I can't remember this exact amount, so I won't say it, but we've committed to double the number of our female tour guides across the world and in countries like Morocco. And I was looking after Morocco back at the time, we had 0. So it was kind of a challenge. So a lot of the work we've done to become a B Corp have made us a better business. And I think it's also great to know that when we commit and we B Corp, we also have to be recertified. So that means you always have ways to improve yourself. So the project was very complex. We are vertically integrated. So Intrepid as a tour operator owns their destination management companies in different destinations, which makes it very difficult, especially in developing countries. Morocco has been the first B Corp, the first travel B Corp of the country. Vietnam was our first B Corp of the country. So you can imagine the impact of achieving a certification like this for our people there, for our partners and all of that. So no, we are not certified everywhere. We're certified as a group, but not everywhere individually. And part of our certification process that we're conducting this year is to get more destination management companies into becoming B Corp, which is great because that means if we achieve that, that means we're going to get better in each of these places as well. So it's a learning process, and hopefully we're improving as we go into it.
Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. One of the challenges that I think we're always as an industry picked up on is that the company has an HQ. It takes rich people abroad. It leaves them there. The money that they spend tends to come back to the HQ, and the destination really doesn't benefit as much as one would expect it to. I did a lot of work on the economic benefit of tourism. I used to, before COVID, used to be able to rattle those numbers off, looking at the value of tourism spend in a destination, though, is not something that really gets looked at very much. Juliet, I know that this is a really big passion for you. How can people start asking the questions about when they travel, how much of their money is going to benefit the destinations and the people in those destinations? And what should they be doing as a result of that?
Yeah, I think, Rory sort of touched upon that, by the way, also just what we're all talking about. We all know why it's good for a business to be good, and we all know why it's important. But I think ultimately we're just looking at also why does the consumer get out of spending their money on a business that's good, right? Because it comes down to being a bit selfish, and we're all being serious, and this is fascinating. I was on mute, so you didn't hear the car that parked outside, and it was so loud, the music. It was R&B core. I was like enjoying a whole different music experience while you guys were talking. Anyway, so let's think about the joy of travel and go back to that and think, well, look, if you go and support a little local business wherever it is in the world, and you know that money is going to the owner, it feels better. Just as Rory touched upon, is the people who work there are happier. There's better staff retention, so they've worked there longer. It feels, ultimately, we're allowed to be a little bit selfish, actually, and put our own customer experience first. It actually it feels better when the money stays in that community. I mean, there's a whole, to be honest with you, I think one of the greatest, if there is a recalibration of this financial system and capitalism as we know it towards more community economics, as you say. Henry and I often, we talk about leakage, about these big multinational companies. They exist to make money. They exist to open businesses in other places so they can bring the profit back. But if we can have a much more community-focused model, it's better for the distribution of wealth, as Tom mentioned, and it's better for the guest experience. I don't want to go to a big chain hotel somewhere else in the world. it just tastes better to eat food made by the people from there. So if we always just go, it goes back to, don't worry, it's okay to be a bit selfish and want the best travel or holiday experience. But actually, by the way, when you support community economics, which sounds a bit joyless when we talk about that, you will also get that. So it's you know, it's not just the right thing to do, worthy and earnest. It's a better experience for the traveler at the end of the day.
Tom, you've actually built this in as a KPI for your business, haven't you? Spend locally. How do you do that?
Well, imperfectly is probably the main thing. Now we measure a couple of things. One is the percentage of bookings within a trip. So this is in an itinerary, a sort of a sales proposal. We'll say this percent of the services within the tour are booked directly. So actually, somewhat like Intrepid, we've got our own kind of branch offices and stuff overseas. So we're very directly connected to our destinations. So we like to think that in terms of leakage really helps to create a much more sort of nuanced trip. So we may have 20 or 30 suppliers delivering a single holiday for 2 people, you know. So we embrace that complexity because I think it tends to say that there's less leakage. And the other thing is we measure and sort of state is the percentage of owner hosted nights, which absolutely goes back to what Juliette is saying about the flavor. They tend to be places, often we'll find they're places that are sort of, they are the protective zone, the halo zone around a beautiful area, a natural area. So, you know, you're kind of making sure that the tree is worth more standing up than cut down. And you're doing that by making sure that the villages around are experiencing economic development through tourism as a consequence of conservation. So, you know, it's this sort of virtuous circle going on. It is imperfect because, of course, you know, I say, well, we directly book that hotel. I might be paying them tuppence. I might be screwing them to the last penny. It might be locally hosted, but he might be dumping nuclear waste in the lettuce patch. So there is no perfection. I think this is where the B Corp certification kind of is a helpful secondary kind of layer of trust. You say, well, it could mean that, but it's pretty unlikely they'd get past the B Corp or B Lab if they were featuring hotels that were dumping nuclear waste kind of thing. But yeah, again, with all of this stuff, I'm very aware that not all the answers, you know, I don't think any of us are sitting here with all the answers. It's extremely complicated. I would love to think that we could communicate clearly to clients the benefits that come with this and what we're doing to maximize those benefits within their trip, why it's better. We don't, you know, we try. It's a journey. We're not there yet.
So let's just build on that for a second. So you would love your clients to, or you'd love to be able to communicate better, but what would you want your clients to ask? What are the kinds of questions that if we do want people to travel better, what should people be asking businesses, whether that be your businesses or whether, you know, what they should be asking journalists, what should they be asking on Twitter, what should they be asking people who have the control and have the ability to create change? What are those things that they should be doing?
You're asking,
I
I've
can,
got to stop
anyone.
talking, surely. Come on, make somebody else talk. Rory.
Yeah, Rory, what should they be doing?
I think it touches on a number of things that we have been talking about, and I think the people I communicate with, whether it's in my magazine or online or the interviews I do, is general travelers. So there's obviously a niche of people, myself included, who are very interested in sustainability and willing to undertake considerable research before they make decisions. And I should say that that's relatively new to me, certainly the level of research that I undertake now. And that audience will grow, but slowly. I think the greater challenge or opportunity, depending on how you feel on a certain day, is mass tourism, the greater number of people and where they go. And I think because we're talking about the questions people ask and communication. For me, I have found it better, certainly in the magazine articles that I have published, to nudge people rather than push them. I think if you attempt to make them feel bad about their choices, and Juliet kind of touched on this about it's okay to be a little bit selfish, then they immediately push back and say, no, I get to make my own decisions. You don't tell me off about the decisions that I'm making. I think the better way, and we've touched on this throughout the panel, is to explain to them why taking these decisions will be better for them. If you make it personal to them, to bring it back to that idea of personalization, then they're more interested, then they're more willing to listen. And that ultimately is the goal that you want to achieve. And so I hope by telling people, by publishing articles to make it about media, and media has a really important role here to play, because if you look at the front of the newspapers today, it's all about Benidorm and Mallorca and so forth and so on. And we don't want thousands and thousands of people continuing to go to Benidorm and Mallorca, or back to Venice, or into Krakow. Over-tourism is one problem of many that is caused by that. I think we need to do a better job of trying to nudge consumers into making those better choices by demonstrating to them what those better choices mean to them. And then I hope by doing that, they will choose some of these better companies. Then they will say, well, okay, this company isn't doing it for me. Here are some better companies that I can choose. I think, to wrap it up, what makes it really difficult for consumers, and again, we've touched on this, is greenwashing. So for me, we almost publish nothing on a kind of regular basis about sustainability, because we are skeptical about so many of the claims that are out there. And to interrogate those claims, as I touched on earlier, it's really time intensive. It's really difficult. And it's really difficult to, Which has launched on its Best Buy scheme, so Which tests products, it's launched eco-buys, and Which is able to do that because it has its own testing labs, it controls some of the things that it's measuring. But when you're looking at external companies and service providers, it's really difficult, because all you have initially is their word to go on. So if you're a consumer, it's really tough. And I do think we are going to need organizations like B Corps, and there are others out there as well that have done some of this interrogation for you. And to bring it back to your original question, I think they then prompt the questions you need to ask. We need to be realistic. Consumers, and Tom talked about this, that it's never straightforward with sustainability. Something can be good, something can be bad. But if there is a couple of questions that consumers have in their mind that they can ask the poor companies, who will often fail on, hopefully that will kind of shift them in a better direction to better organizations. So I suppose a hopeful answer, but quite a lot of challenges if you're an individual consumer, I think.
Yeah, thanks. And Juliet, you were frantically nodding to a lot of what Rory was saying.
Yeah,
there.
Thank you. First of all, can I say I've done a lot of webinars and talks in the last year, and this is, for me personally, one of the most rewarding. Thank you so much. I think we need to all have many more difficult conversations. And listening to Rory is, it sort of reminds me of why I exist, which is to say, well, first of all, one of the greatest ways to influence other people's opinions is through storytelling, and is through inspiring them, and great, happy stories. That's people respond well to that. They don't want fingers wagged, and they are not going to read impact reports. But it is our responsibility as journalists and members of the media and travel operators and experts to do all the due diligence and read all of this and make sure that you do know it, so that we can make informed decisions and give shortcuts. But we do have to remember, it's just so interesting to hear Rory say all this, because there is a lot of greenwash out there. Certainly is. But, everyone cares about something. So we need to talk about everything enough so they can think, well, I really care about women's rights, or I really care about accessibility. And Rory, you sort of mentioned sustainability, or I can't remember what it was, but accessibility or whatever, that is sustainability. The right for every human being to have access to travel, that is sustainability. All of these things are sustainability. So the more we talk about all these tiny little details about positive impact and equity and all of this, people can find the things they care about and relate to it. Because we want people to go away and have an amazing holiday. And when they actually live and breathe and see different cultures and geographies, they will care more about the challenges that face those different communities. So I think we just need to keep amping up the joy, really. We need to pull people into our stories, not just push out the information. It's definitely about the tone of voice. So I'm sad that Which feels too, I understand it, but, you know, we have a huge responsibility of members of the media to make everyone care about, and we have to do our homework about the challenges facing us.
So we're conscious of time. I'd like to do another poll. So if we bring up those poll, and we'll quickly get answers to that, and then we'll have one final question, then we'll move into Q&A, because we've had some great questions that have come in over the time we've been here. So the poll is, what steps are you most likely to take to travel better in future? So what steps are you most likely to take to travel better in future? And while we just get the answers to that, I'd just like to say, I mean, we've seen some really big changes from a policy perspective just over the last few days. So, you know, the international aviation and shipping is going to be included in the UK's climate targets now that have been increased to 78% removal of CO2 from 1990 levels. I mean, that's quite important. In France, we've seen that they're banning domestic flights for anything less than about a 2.5 hour or 250 kilometer train journey. You know, again, these really big policy decisions that have come from government. So just get the answers from the poll. But what I want to ask you is, today is Earth Day, so I'm going to give you all your magic wands. What would you stop happening and what would you start? Just 2 words, please, each, really quickly, so we can move on to Q&A. But let's first of all get the answers to the poll. What are the steps that people are most likely to take to travel better in future? Let me get those answers. Choose an operator that gives back. Well, that's exactly the answer we want, given that we're launching Travel with B Corp today. So well done for that, everybody. You got the answer that I think we all wanted to hear. But yeah, some really interesting things there that people are looking to do. Travel domestically, interesting, is slightly lower. 31 out of the 131 of you that are on the panel are saying that that's the thing that you're more likely to do now. As well as flying less and staying longer. So some great ideas for what we can do when we are going to think a little bit more sustainably for travel in the future. So thank you for that. So let's go back to my question. You've got your magic wand. What are the things for sustainability that you would stop doing for the travel industry? And what are things that you would start doing? Zena, go with you first.
I'll be very short. Less words, more actions. We're very action focused. I think actions will make the difference. So this is what I think the industry should look at.
Great. Juliette?
More show, less tell. So more, exactly as Intrepid is a member of the Science Based Targets Initiative, more science, measurable transparency around financials. I still want all those lovely stories that spark emotion, but we need to qualify the statements around sustainability very specifically.
Good. Rory?
Pick two kind of practical, specific things. I think managed government intervention to prevent over-tourism. Don't see another solution to that. And an end to short flights. I'm particularly with this country, hugely frustrated with our approach to rail and the benefits that could bring.
Okay. And finally, Tom.
Stop happening trouble. Yeah, I'm just going to go down the flight route because I feel that the others have said what they need to say. So stop happening in just flight sales. I mean, really, just flying to some kind of place because it's cheap, not because you've ever had any interest in going there. Stop that. And I think start actually building into pricing. And this is specifically airlines, but building in carbon to the pricing. It can't be treated as an externality anymore. It's unbelievable that it still is. And so it's just going to cost more. We've got to take it on the chin.
Well, just
okay, in which case, then there's a lot of questions in the chat about...
I was just going to say, just that aviation fuel still isn't taxed, hasn't been since World War II. So
exactly,
yeah.
So say there's some a lot of questions in the tax or in the Q&A that relate to that about, okay, so is then, if we do have higher prices because the tax, the carbon is incorporated into flight prices, does travel go back to being the exclusive to rich people, to the minority of people who are taking the majority of flights already now, but to actually, it'll stop a lot of people who are able to currently to travel? Zina, you were shaking your head.
Yeah, because I want to say that we don't need to fly to travel. We can travel closer to home. We can travel in trains. There's just so many places you can travel without flying. And I think we can also travel less, but longer. And we're really promoting this. I know Tom is nodding, he's doing this as well. And make the most out of your travel rather than just look at the volume and the number. And you can reduce flying by doing this.
But also, I think, look at the actual numbers in terms of the flying. And Rory, you mentioned mass tourism. I think I'd also be very keen to point out that mass tourism, the problem isn't generally with people who go away for one holiday a year. There's 90-something% of flights from this country are taken by, 5 or 10% of the people. So for a kind of, if we call it an ordinary holiday, a short haul, even if they were to fly, they don't necessarily need to, but they were to fly, even looking forwards to the kind of levels that Mark Carney's talking about in terms of carbon pricing at somewhere sort of north of $100 a ton, kind of medium term, that's what we're talking about. You're talking about adding, say, 60 quid, 70 quid to the cost of a European flight, therefore to the overall cost of a package. It's not catastrophic percentages being added to these numbers. It is doable. It can't be free. It's not going to be free. But so I wouldn't overestimate, even at the higher ends of carbon pricing, what the true price impact would be.
We have a question about the barriers of encouraging more people to stay local. I think anyone who, as I do, lives in the UK and gets the rain in December, January, February, March, and it just goes on and on and on. For me, that is a barrier to staying local. Obviously, I can't travel at that time anyway. But what are those? Is it just we are not exotic, even though we might be exotic to other countries, people in other countries? What can we do as an industry, or what should we be doing as an industry to get more people to stay locally? Juliet, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure do. It's not cheap to go on holiday in the UK. And, I think we all do have to have a little bit of a moment to reflect on what a point of privilege we all come from. And I understand what Tom's saying, but I'm thinking about a lot of people I know in lower socioeconomic groups who that cheap package holiday is all they can afford and all they want. And so for us to say, oh, it's not that much at it. I was watching Gogglebox the other day, and they were watching amazing hotels. And they were going, oh my God, $1,000 Canadian a night. You could get like a month in Benidorm for that, and I respect that, frankly, to a degree. So I think, when you look at the UK, I say you should take a little bit longer on your trip for 3 weeks and go by train to Portugal. They don't have time to take off work. People don't have that flexibility all the time. Or in the UK, our issue is B&Bs and hotels can be very expensive and not great quality. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I do think there should be subsidization for people who deserve holidays, actually. And I think everyone talks about planting trees and all of that, but we need to be setting up way more community initiatives for people who live in inner cities who perhaps should be subsidized to have time in nature. It's just not affordable for a lot of people to have a holiday, even in the UK.
Okay. So this today is about the launch of Travel by B Corp as well. Zina, and the vision and thought of Travel by B Corp. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of where it's come from and what your thoughts? Oh, that's my mother. Sorry, calling from Canada. Can you give us a little thought about the Travel for B Corp vision?
Sure. I think Tom mentioned this earlier. We understand each other when we've been through the process of becoming a B Corp, And the reason why both him and I connected to create this group initially, and then invite all the B Corp to join us, it's because we did realize that while there are some quite famous B Corp in other industries in the UK, in the travel industry was still not known. And we talked about, there's so much greenwashing that maybe it was an opportunity for us to come together, join force, and elevate the voice of what is a B Corp, a travel B Corp in the travel industry, working together, letting the competition aside. We really here with the same mission, which is making sure that we can have a travel industry. We all want to have a travel industry, and we all know, in this group at least, that we won't have one if things keep going as it is right now, or pre-COVID at least. So just joining force and organizing events like this one, hopefully we'll have more as we can learn from each other. We're not pretending we know better, but we just want to open the conversation, have honest conversation, share learnings, discuss and improve, and hopefully become better out of the creation of this movement.
Great. So yes, I'd like to encourage everybody to have a look at the website Travel by B Corp. It's new. There are only 5 companies that are listed at the moment. We know that there are a few more B Corp travel companies in the UK, and we will get those organized to be added to the website as soon as we can. And we also know that there are many companies in the UK who are going through the B Corp process. And as soon as they are certified, they will also be added to the group. And it is about lifting everyone. And so we encourage you to get involved, talk to companies. We're not expecting all travel companies by any means to become a B Corp, but there are a lot of policies, there are a lot of programs that the B Corp movement does around helping other companies to understand how to start measuring and monitoring your sustainability, and how to start thinking about the tough questions that your businesses need in order to be able to survive for the future. So I'd love to encourage you to look. At the moment, we've got Flugelbinder, Intrepid, Joro Experiences, Pura Aventura, and Saudays that are on the website. And say others will join. And I'd just like to thank you all. Oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Just very briefly, I wanted to say, just to reinforce what Zina was saying, but fundamentally the point of the group was to raise the profile of the B in relation to travel to UK consumers. So this speaks back to sort of Rory and Juliet, sort of cutting through the noise, so that actually, there is something that has kind of real teeth to it, and there's a label I can trust. We are very different companies within it. We do different things, we do things differently, but at least you have that core sense of, all right, somebody else has done the homework on them. Now, what are they offering and what's right for me? So it's about consumer recognition, basically.
Absolutely. So we're just at time. Thank you so much, Juliet and Rory, and thank you also, Zina and Tom, for your candid discussion today. We've talked on some really important issues, and I say we certainly don't have the answers, but I think starting to have these really frank and open conversations is only a good thing for what we all need to do to start making our industry a little bit more aware, and also a little bit more responsible for the actions that we have when we're traveling around the world. So thank you everybody for participating, and it's been really, really great to have you on board, and we hope to see you again at another event very, very shortly. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.